What I'm about to share with you happened back in 2019. I live in Tamaulipas, Mexico. Where I'm from, let's just say it's not the safest area, where crime is high and poverty is well known, with many just trying to make a living. I had been working myself into the ground and had taken some time out to rest and recover. Whilst I did this, I decided to take a visit to my late father. He had been gone for a few years now, but when me and my brothers were ever in need, we would visit his grave and talk with him. We always felt that he could hear us, and we felt better after doing this. Like he was watching over us, as they say. So one night I took a trip to his resting place to pay him a visit and get some spiritual advice. As I arrived at the graveyard, I made my way to his resting place. When I neared, I could see something wasn't right. Locking my eyes on his grave, I tried to work out what it was, and the closer I got, the more apparent it became. And I felt my heart raced in a state of shock and panic. As I reached it, standing over his grave, tears rolled down my face. The grave was open. The more I inspected to work out what the hell had happened, the more I discovered. Now I knew my father hadn't risen from the grave as much as I wished that was possible in life. But I could clearly see the grave had been dug up, and the more I looked, the soul-crushing sight hit me. His corpse had been disturbed and his skull removed. I felt physically sick. I couldn't believe it, and I didn't know what to do as I absorbed what lay in front of me. The reality of my father's grave being dug up. It was then I heard the sound of talking, and what seemed to be a shovel in the distance. In despair at the time and wanting to know what the hell had happened to my father's grave, and to see if someone could help me, I followed the sound of voices. Homing in on the voices, it was in the near distance I could see a light flashing. Slowing as I watched, I could see the sight of two men digging into a grave as if they were digging the grave up. I couldn't believe it as I watched. Had I stumbled across the people who had dug up my father's grave? I thought they were armed with tools in a duffel bag, and I knew this was wrong. These people were committing a terrible crime, and I had to make my presence known. Impulsively, I screamed over, asking them what was going on and what they were doing. The speed at which they turned to face me. They were clearly startled that someone was around. But I hadn't thought my actions all the way through. My presence didn't scare them off, but instead nearly cost me my life. The man with the torch quickly pulled a gun out of his pocket as he made a beeline for me. Aiming the gun towards me, the fear and panic that hit me was enough to cause me to break out into a sprint back the way I came. As I heard the shouts behind me and the haunting sound of gunshots that were meant for me, my heart raced as I screamed, knowing at any moment a bullet could hit me. Not stopping, I managed to reach the entrance of the graveyard and the sight of my car on the street, all the while hearing the raised voices behind me. Throwing myself into my car, I couldn't start it fast enough, as the sound of more gunshots echoed towards me, one hitting my back windscreen as it smashed. I screamed as I pressed down on the accelerator, speeding out of there, looking in my rearview mirror at the sight of the man, aiming his gun as he slowly drifted further away as I left him in the distance. Arriving home in hysterics, I told my brothers what had happened and what I had discovered and the news of our father's grave. They were filled with outrage and anger, but were also angry with me for approaching the men. My brothers went to the graveyard that night to see, but whoever was there was already gone. That night 5 graves were dug up in total, and all the skulls taken from the graves. Now, having reported this to the police, it got nowhere. They didn't want to know. It was up to us to get answers, and having done our own research and spoken to many people, we were led to a friend who knew what this was. He got up news feeds and articles online of what is known as grave robbing, and the selling of human remains on the black market. As this macabre news was brought to our attention, I couldn't believe that this was a real thing. Through illegal marketplaces and the dark web, literally anything can be sold. The news that we read described how criminals were stealing skulls and other human remains from graves to supply a largely unregulated online market for human remains sold to people all over the world, for the likes of experiments, science, And sickeningly, ornaments and decorations for whatever twisted people bought this stuff. The more we researched, the more it sickened me, as I read that people could also specify what they wanted, and it would be taken for them, ranging from higher prices if they wanted male remains, female remains, or even children's remains. What I'm telling you is not even a joke, and you can research it yourself. This was a crime sweeping through my country, but it didn't just happen here. This was happening all over the world in many countries. The fact that it was easy here, as authorities didn't really bat an eyelid to this crime, is why it must be so common here. And the fact that it could be sold to buyers over the border with relative ease. It is not known to the public here, as it's probably being covered up by the corrupt. But there are people online bringing this crime to light, and highlighting that modern-day grave robbing is taking place, with one article stating that 21 human skulls had been stolen from a local cemetery months prior to what happened to me. This may not be the scary story some of you were expecting, but I have to get it out there that these crimes happen. It hurts me to know that my father's remains are likely out there in someone's possession now, and I will never find out. It just shows you, this is one disturbing world we live in, and the web really can be a dark place. Having a fascination and obsession with the dark web has scarred me for life, not truly knowing what I was getting myself into, and what horrors have happened since I stupidly delved into the world that is the dark web. Let's just say, I will never be the same from my trip down the rabbit hole. But somehow, I'm still the lucky one. A friend and I had always had a thirst for gore and the twisted videos you could find. Where most people would look away in disgust, we watched, intrigued by it. In this video, I won't be using any real names as to be safe when telling this. We were always online, and lived on the same street. Most of the time we were at mine, as I often had the place to myself, with family working out of town. And with that, we pretty much got up to anything we wanted. We weren't the partying type. We would go out, sure, yeah. But most of our time we were hanging out, and online searching for things to entertain us. It was one evening that changed mine and Dan's relationship slightly. We had been on the dark web before, but only really scratched the surface level, not fully committing to exploring its vast chambers of macabre and illegal content. But when Dan suggested it to me, having heard of live streams we could sign up for on View, we were instantly reeled in by the idea of viewing such content. With the place to ourselves and the knowledge of knowing no one would be disturbing us anytime soon, we settled in for the night and set up our station to once again explore the dark web, hoping to bypass the boring drugs and arms dealing sites and messed up porn sites and find stuff we were actually interested in and fascinated by. It may sound sick, I know, but we wanted to see what fucked up stuff we could actually find. And with our evening, hours in and us peeling back the onion links, we ended up coming across a site specialized in live streams of home invasions and supposed snuff films. And it was on this hub of links that one grabbed both of our attentions instantly. The title of the site was The Hunt, which was more than enough to grab hold of our attention. We clicked on the link and was brought to the homepage, which was full of filmed videos, which in short, sent a masked figure round to people's houses, apartments, you name it, people who had few connections, chasing them around their own homes. And then, if they had not escaped within the time limit displayed on the video, they would then be shot, cut up. And for instance, one sick video, we witnessed their chopped up body parts left to rot in a bathtub. But these videos were all filmed, not live. As much as it shocked Dan, to me, it wasn't real. I didn't believe what we were watching, more so good video editing and effects. That's when Dan challenged me and said we should try a live stream, as there was one due to start later that night. All we had to do was buy our way in, and in the moment to be proven wrong, I agreed with him. So that's what we did. We paid the price and joined the live stream countdown. As we waited and the stream finally began, it started at night, with the camera focusing on someone's run-down backyard. As the person got closer to the house, they began checking the back windows, and found a broken sliding window they were able to push up for easy access. As they entered the property, they began wandering around the house from room to room. As they neared one room, The sound of a TV blaring could be heard. The person slowly stood in the doorway, peering into the room where a man sat, alone, watching the TV. The figure behind him just stood there, watching him for a good minute, as if studying his prey. The livestream comments began pouring in with, "Sneak up behind him, shoot him, suffocate him." Spectators arguing on what the intruder should do. The intruder then held up to the camera a big hunting knife. As Dan and I watched, the intruder slowly approached the man in the chair, unknowing that he was being stalked. It was then the intruder made himself known. The man turned his head to his complete surprise and shock, jumping up instantly, screaming and asking who the fuck was he. It was then he saw the hunting knife, that you could see the fear in his eyes as he backed up, running for the door. The figure chased him, tripping by the hallway stairs. The man screaming as the intruder lay down on top of him, pinning him down. The intruder proceeded to plunge the knife through the man's forehead as the screaming stopped instantly. Silence fell as the comments rolled in. "That was awesome. Useless waste. Did you see the fear in his eyes?" Sick, twisted comments, one after another. Dan looked at me as he said, "What the fuck?" in amazement. He couldn't believe what he had just seen, and to his annoyance, I still didn't believe it was real. As we sat there, arguing, I decided to have some fun and typed into the chat myself, "Fake as fuck," followed by "cheap effect." I was adamant that it was all fake. I mean, don't get me wrong, it looked real, the live streams that we were seeing, but to me I just couldn't buy that it was all real. More so great effects and good camera work. Dan, on the other hand, couldn't take his eyes off it, convinced it was real, that there was no faking what we had seen. As comments followed mine, they had turned their attention to us. "Fake, you fucking idiot. That knife deserves to be for you." As I read them, it was then the camera moved to face the person holding it. To our shock, it was to the view of a white, faceless mask, just two darkened eye holes, as a distorted voice spoke.
"Fake, is it?"
Followed by a creepy laugh as they proceeded to say my username, followed by, "Well, maybe we'll show you how real it is." After that, the stream cut off. I slightly chuckled a nervous laugh. I didn't realize my comments would be highlighted. Dan looked at me in shock. After that, we called it a night. But for the following weeks, I saw less and less of Dan, as all he ever wanted to do when he came round was dive back onto the dark web. With me not wanting to, he ended up staying at his and watching through stream after stream. He had become addicted by what he thought was real. One evening I tried to call and text him to see if he wanted to come round, but there was no answer. I logged into my laptop to see if he was online. It said he was. I tried calling again, but still no answer. I gathered he was ignoring my calls and clearly too busy, probably on that site. So with boredom kicking in after a few hours, I shut the laptop down and headed to bed. My sleep that night didn't last long, as I was awoken to an almighty bang. The sound of smashing glass sent my pulse into a frenzy. I was fully awake now, my heart racing. My laptop was open on my desk as the screen lit up my room. It was off when I went to bed, as the last thing I did before going to sleep was shut it down. Now, it was on, and not only was it on, but it had a live feed playing on it. And as I took a closer look, I'd never felt fear like it. The live feed was a camera moving around my room, not just any room, but my kitchen, downstairs where I had just heard the smashing glass. The name above the stream hit me like a bulldozer. It was titled, "The Hunt Live Stream." I felt physically sick. I could feel my heart pounding as I began to shake. Someone was in my house, and if it was indeed what I could see it was, I knew I had to act fast. And after thinking it was all fake, being in the situation myself, it now felt so real, and I knew my life was at risk. The stream slowly moved around my house, as it moved from the kitchen to the front room. I knew my dad kept a loaded gun in his room, so wasting no time and trying to remain silent, I picked up my laptop and made my way to his room, all the while keeping my eyes on the laptop and where the intruder was. As I located the loaded revolver, the adrenaline surged through me as I heard the creak of a floorboard. Looking down at the screen, they were getting closer to the stairs. If I didn't act now, they would soon be up here with me and find me. Heart racing, realizing I had no time and it was now or never, as the stream faced the bottom of my staircase looking up. I gripped the gun and ran towards the stairs as I shouted for them to stay back. As I looked at the bottom of the stairs, fear crippled me, as a masked hooded figure stared back up at me. They waved their arms, and I could see the shine of the knife they held in their hand, knowing it was meant for me. I pointed the gun down the stairs. The figure made a muffled sound, which terrified me, and at that point I didn't hesitate, as I unloaded 2 rounds into the intruder's chest, watching as they fell back, crumbling to the floor in a heap. I stood there, staring down the stairs, too afraid to move, wondering if he was alone. The house was silent, and as I watched the figure, it never moved. I slowly made my way down the stairs, gripping the revolver tighter as I neared the intruder. I reached the bottom of the stairs. Looking around, there was no one else in sight. I looked back down at the figure, and as I did, I could feel my heart in my throat. The faceless mask stared back at me, as I slowly built up the courage to remove it. But as I did, I fell back in complete disbelief. The lifeless eyes of Dan stared back at me. His mouth was taped up. I couldn't process what I was seeing as tears rolled down my face. I then saw it. A card taped to the left side of his chest, and as I reached out, peeling it off his hoodie, I turned it over to the haunting words. "Is this real enough for you?" I was a shaking mess as I threw up. I didn't know what to do. The only thing I could do was call the police and tell them everything. I had gone looking for thrills and depraved things on the dark web. I'd come across what I thought was just fake stage snuff streams. Yeah, I was so wrong, and found myself a part of what they called the hunt. This case is still ongoing. The real perpetrators behind these horrific crimes are still out there and probably will never be identified. I will always have to live with the horrific experience now, and the guilt that plagues me every day. I should have believed my friend and never called these people out on their streams. They made me kill my best friend in what I thought was a home invasion, but yet they made us a part of their sick online game for viewers' pleasure. They broke into his house when he was alone, kidnapped him, and used him as bait for me. As of now, I don't know what's going to happen to me. But if you learn anything from my experience, please, don't go messing with things on the dark web. And if you do, don't make my mistakes. Thank you for joining us and watching this chilling video. We hope you enjoyed this topic, and you found the fear within. What other subjects would you like to hear soon? Let us know in the comments what creeps you out. If you're new here, say hello, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Become a part of the Horror Motives world. See you soon with another terrifying video.